Good afternoon, YouTube, and happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of AI News, Drama, and Updates. We had some really interesting and fun headlines this week, but I also mixed it up a little bit. So I want to start by talking about some new technology that I saw, first with Meta. Now, I've given Meta a lot of kudos for their recent releases because they've released just about everything that they've come up with. Llama is the thing that they're most noteworthy for, but just about everything that they've dealt with in the AI space, they've been immediately releasing their findings into the open source world so that other people can build on that knowledge. Voicebox is a little bit different. This is a text-to-speech model that they're a little bit concerned could be immediately misused. It's apparently that powerful. So let's take a look at the demonstration here and see what we get.
We are going to be looking at an amazing project from Meta AI called Voicebox. It's a text-to-speech model, but it can do a lot more than that. Now, another great application is style transfer. So you can take somebody's audio if you are a content creator.
It's interesting because as you hear this guy talk, you know that he himself is an AI voice. He's an AI avatar, and you can hear some stutter stops in his speech, which sounds very, very natural. If you haven't looked at or dealt with any type of voice cloning AI stuff before, using a 2-second voice clip to completely recreate someone's voice might sound insane, but I've actually seen this firsthand already with even tools like Tortoise TTS. My understanding is this is a similar technology, similar tool, just a little bit more powerful to maybe some of the stuff that we're seeing on live streams with AI voices for TTS and things along those lines. Now, the use cases for taking somebody's voice and recreating it digitally are pretty limited to just impersonating that person or creating something new that they were not a part of. A lot of this AI tech has questionable use cases and a lot of questions that come up in terms of copyright, in terms of credit and things along those lines, and this is going to be no different. I'm curious to see what you guys think, and I'll definitely be checking the comments below for some feedback here. Segueing to something similar but not exactly the same, Parrot is an AI-powered transcription platform. So you can basically take speech and turn it into text, which to me sounds like Whisper. It sounds like maybe even the automatic closed captioning service that YouTube provides when you upload a video. A lot of these AI companies are coming and going very, very quickly, so we may or may not hear more about this one in particular, but the amount of money being thrown around at these companies that are springing up overnight is nothing to sneeze at. But as we trailblaze into this world where voices may or may not be real anymore, we're also seeing services like Evaluagent, where you're able to use this AI technology to analyze what's going on a phone call. They're using it right now for call centers and to evaluate the performance therein. When you call a company and you hear this call may be recorded for quality or training purposes, well, this is now AI that's doing the quality checking and training. The article says that reviewing customer calls and texts for quality assurance takes a lot of time, and it's rarely done regularly. So maybe 1 or 2 out of every 100 calls is actually getting monitored or checked. So something like this is really interesting to see, where a call in its totality can be analyzed, broken down into different sections, and somebody can look at this and determine if any areas of opportunity exist or if something needs to be addressed. And while this is very specific to the phone call industry and things along those lines, you're probably going to see something similar in various different industries, because for a lot of businesses, bringing automation like this into the business world is going to just save them time and generate more money. So that's a big win-win for them. Now, whether or not this is a benefit to the workers, if this allows them to get coached better or more accurately, or potentially this results in more of a feeling of micromanagement, or maybe it becomes easier to get caught and terminated for little mistakes. We'll have to see how things like this eventually roll out, because when we're dipping our toes into hypothetical ideas like this, you never really know how it's going to end up. I wanted to change gears a little bit in this week's video, and I want to start talking a little bit about some quantum developments that have been coming out. I may start mixing this more regularly into these AI videos because I feel like these are technologies that are going to start to coincide very quickly. Microsoft, for example, has now announced that it has expectations that it's going to have this quantum supercomputer built within 10 years. And there's now actually a very real possibility that you yourself may have a quantum computer in your home, potentially within that amount of time. Not only would more powerful computers allow us to do even more crazy things with the world of AI, but AI as it stands right now is even helping us generate ideas to bring computers like this into reality. Now, I am not going to pretend at all to understand how quantum computers work yet. It's a technology that's so far beyond what I understand about computers that I'm not even going to touch it. Now, when I look at a quantum computer, something like this, and this is apparently a quantum computer per Microsoft's imagery, this looks insane to me. I don't understand the first thing about how it works or why it works. So while on one hand I'm excited to learn a lot more about it, on the other it just reminds me of Black Mirror and the quantum computer in the first episode we saw there. And on that note, I just wanted to share that Netflix did go as far as creating Streamberry.tv, which is obviously not an entirely real website, but you can check it out for yourself if you want to give it a look. And also, you can create an account. You can upload your picture for something like this, I would imagine. If you have no idea what you're looking at yet, go ahead and check out the new series Black Mirror. Episode 1, Joan is Awful, is amazing, in my opinion. So, ChatGPT got in a little bit of trouble this week for giving out working Windows 11 keys, but apparently so did Bard. What I saw when I looked into this story is basically Windows 11 keys are based on a mathematical formula. So you could give an LLM an example of this is what a key looks like, and it can try to figure out the formula. The way the original user figured this out, they convinced ChatGPT that their grandmother used to recite Windows 11 keys to them to make them fall asleep, and they just asked ChatGPT to do the same, and it complied. Now, while this is something that you're probably going to see get shut down right away because it'll be very easy to just go a different direction with future keys, this is probably not going to be the last time that there's a story like this, especially for older software that's not as nimble to be able to move. You know, a lot of these keys are just based on algorithmic formulas, and GPT can just figure out what the formula was and reproduce it. But this part, just to be clear, this isn't magic, this isn't AI, this is really the same technology that's existed in password cracking programs and things like that for a long time. I think the fun part about this story is really the grandma element that was added to it, and GPT just, kind of giving these keys out. Now, as an update to last week's story, we talked about the Mechanical Turk being infiltrated by people cheating with AI. People were being paid pennies on the dollar to do very simple tasks that were much easier for a human to do than a computer. The types of stuff that they'd be given was like CAPTCHAs and things that a computer really can't do. But nowadays they can. Now, this article is titled, "We Should All Be Worried About AI Infiltrating Crowdsourced Work," but I don't really understand the premise behind a lot of that. They're saying a paper here is suggesting between a third and almost a half of the distributed crowd workers are cheating, so to speak. But hey, maybe it's just the way that I look at things. If the only thing being hurt here is the bottom line of a mega conglomerate like Amazon, I don't care. And I certainly wouldn't consider that bad or cheating or anything negative for the people that are being paid pennies to do this type of work. If they're making more money and they're able to do it more efficiently, how is that not better for them? And like I said last week, I'm sure the types of jobs that get released onto the Mechanical Turk are going to be slightly more filtered as time goes on and these things become more and more available. So, update here on China and the AI GPU availability situation. You may remember that the US has cut off access for China to access NVIDIA's A100s or the H100s. These are the most powerful AI-empowered GPUs that are available. Cards like this, or even better versions, are the ones that are powering things like Stability AI or Midjourney, things like that. So since these cards have been cut off, it's created a little bit of a supply and demand issue. And now we're seeing that Chinese businesses and universities, they're going through these back alley deals to try to get GPUs that they do have access to. There's basically an underground chip market now for these GPUs. And the cards are now being sold for almost $20,000, which is double what we would potentially pay here. But the power in something like this versus what we have access to in a local gaming computer it's like night and day. In a case like this, the US is going to be doing everything it can to stay in front of everyone else in terms of the AI world. I know a lot of people who watch these videos are probably hoping on more regulation, but I don't really see that happening as long as it continues to benefit the United States in the same way that it has. So far, I'm not aware of any negative impact of the AI boom in the United States. If anything, it's been great for our economics, but they're also already using it in terms of like weapons and defense contracts and things like that. I've heard rumblings of Google working with the Department of Defense, and last week we even talked about Palantir and how they're building AI tools for the military. But as time goes on, it's going to remain incredibly important for companies and countries to stay on top of the AI race and not lose sight of what's going on. Amazon's AWS is a good example of that. Not only do they have their own tools we already talked about, like Code Whisperer or Bedrock, but they want to invest in AI tools being built onto their platform. In something called the AWS Generative AI Innovation Center, this is a program that is designed to accelerate enterprise innovation and success with generative AI. And if you're wondering what kind of industries might be able to participate in something like this, they're looking at just about everything. Healthcare, life science, media and entertainment, financial services, automotive, manufacturing. I mean, it's all over the place. Say what you will about Amazon, and yeah, they're absolutely a terrible company in a lot of different ways, but AWS is also the backbone of the internet, and they're also one of the few companies that has the tools, the necessary resources, and the ability to really bring AI into the mainstream like it did with Stability AI. It was their access to their technology, their infrastructure that allowed something like that to exist and kind of kick off what ended up happening as far as the AI art revolution. A lot of people do point at that, and I think even Emad mentioned that he points at that as the reason that ChatGPT was forcibly released into the public. So yeah, this is a loaded topic with some mixed feelings, but anytime we're dealing with capitalism, there's always going to be some level of evil involved, it feels like. And speaking of evil, let's talk about lawyers. So we had that lawyer story where the lawyer shows up. He basically asked ChatGPT to do his job. He got a bunch of fake case studies. He went into court the next day and presented that as if it was real information. And of course, the judge was not happy about that. So the update I had for you on the story is now they're fining him $5,000 after including those fake case citations. I had a quote here for you, though. Technological advances are commonplace, and there's nothing inherently improper about using a reliable artificial intelligence tool for assistance. But existing rules impose a gatekeeping role on attorneys to ensure the accuracy of their filings. So yeah, you can use ChatGPT, but you have to double check and make sure that it's right. You have to do your job at some point. So you can't just let AI do the thinking for you. And with a lawyer, I don't know how much $5,000 is really going to affect him, but hopefully he thinks twice next time. I didn't really have anything solid to talk about in terms of the EU regulation. I did see a couple of articles talking about it, but there was really nothing noteworthy to bring to the table here today. But I did want to mention that President Biden did meet with a number of other tech leaders, people that I wasn't as familiar with their names. We talked recently about how Biden and Harris actually interviewed a number of the major tech players, people from OpenAI and Google and things like that. In this new meeting just a few days ago, they met with Tristan Harris, Executive Director for the Center for Human Technology, Fei Li, the co-director for Stanford's Human-Centered AI Institute, and Jennifer Doudna, who is a professor of chemistry at UC Berkeley, amongst others. And while we don't know exactly what they talked about, my hope is that the presence of so many academics was a good thing. On the other side of things, as I looked at the names, as I looked at who they represent, and I looked at some of the subjects and talking points here, and I'm hoping what this is a more realistic look at what AI is doing to the job market than what this article allows us to believe. Based on what it says here, it's implying that digital artists are being wiped out, and so are journalists, and that really isn't the case. In terms of digital art, Secret Invasion was a great example of the amount of anger that you see whenever AI art gets used. But the reality is the same as the story we covered last week. No artist was hurt here. Every artist was still paid. TechCrunch's update basically says that the team used custom AI tools to create characters, attribute movements, but no artist jobs were replaced by incorporating these new tools. Instead, they only complemented and assisted the creative teams. So if art itself isn't being hurt and artists aren't being hurt, what is there to be upset about? And it just feels like a lot of people are still holding on to fears that have not come to fruition in any meaningful way. The more people focus on copyright and credit, what you're going to end up doing is just reinforcing the fact that Marvel actually owns these images, not the original artists who created them. They sold the rights when they worked for this company. And the same thing happened with Adobe stock images, which ultimately became Adobe Firefly, copyright free. But people who don't understand that are worried that it's AI that's actually unethical, dangerous, and designed to eliminate artists' careers, when in reality, it's going to be the copyright laws themselves that do those things. But we can finish off today's video by talking about the two new forms of AI art that just hit the scene. So you've got the new Stable Diffusion XL, which they're calling SDXL 0.9. Comparatively, I wasn't super impressed with the beta for the SDXL model. I believe my exact words were that it didn't really have the style that's kind of apparent when you look at a Midjourney graphic. And while I wouldn't look at this and say, okay, that's distinct, I can certainly see a certain type of style. In terms of realism, for example, like this looks fake and this looks less fake. And as far as quality and fidelity wise, based on the graphics that I'm seeing here, SDXL 0.9 is clearly better than the beta version. Now, if you end up checking it out for yourself and you click this link, you can actually check out Stable Diffusion XL right here through ClipDrop, though I do imagine it's going to be slow. I'm going to try to follow how they're releasing it as an open source, but from my understanding, it looked similar to how they released Llama, where they're releasing it, but you can't just use it. You'd have to contact them for the weights or something along those lines. So I'll figure it out, but I'm kind of annoyed by the fact that they just want to release it in a more complicated way. Like if you want people to use it, you should just release it in a very easy and approachable way. But the timing of this release couldn't have been better because we also saw Midjourney 5.2 release. Now, Midjourney 5.2 fidelity-wise is obviously better than 5.1, but they've also introduced some really cool features here. So let me show you a couple of examples. Now, I came across these mostly on Twitter, but if you look at this as a 5.2 quality graphic, I mean, that's pretty nice. But they've got a new infinite zoom type of feature that they're just calling zoom out. And when you use zoom out, this is the type of fidelity and quality that you get, which is really impressive. Now, here's another version that's more vertical, and you get the picture. To finish off today's video, I feel like this one was maybe a little bit shorter, or maybe I just made really good time, but I really do appreciate those of you who made it to the end of the video. I always do. Those of you especially that like, comment, interact with the channel in any way. That's always very, very helpful. I do have a couple of videos in the pipe, so I may see you sooner, but I hope to see you next Friday for another episode of AI News, Drama, and Updates. Again, I thank you for your time here with me today, and as always, thanks for watching.